thing, so we're going to be talking about how to pay for grad school. Sometimes, well, as I was about to say what I was about to say, I was like, I have more experience in this than I want, because sometimes it is a little bit stressful, and taking on graduate school debt isn't anything to be taken lightly. It is a big decision, and it can be a significant amount of debt depending on the kind of program that you're getting into. And so you really need to educate yourself on, what it is exactly that you're getting yourself into, and how to, if possible, what are ways that you can minimize your expenses. One thing I do want to say, there is a question in the comment that was made. Something that I do want to say before I even begin my presentation is that you really want to do your research for how you're going to pay for your program, or what options are available through your particular institution before you apply for the program. Because once you're in it, depending on your program and how much money your particular program may or may not have, sometimes your options might be limited. You might have to do more work to try to find other ways. And like sometimes it's just very limited. And I think as we go, that will become a little bit more clear what that means. So without further ado, I will go ahead and get started. So like I just said, grad school is a large expense, and it's super important that you shop your degree, shop programs, not only for, are you going to be getting the education that's going to help you elevate your career, but how are you going to pay for it? What are the options? So say, for example, CU Denver, I was on this like graduate panel. I just thought, I got sent an email. I was like, sure, I'll join that and get some insight on what's going on in CU Denver. And so while as an institution, they have more money than MSU Denver generally. I mean, their cost of tuition is a little bit higher. They have more graduate programs than we do. Some of their programs have more money than others. The particular program that I'm in does not have a lot of money. So the options for me getting help paying for my degree from my program are limited. Some of the medical programs, not all, but some of the medical programs have a lot of money. So they're able to help their students fund their degrees a little bit better than other programs. And so it's not just like, oh, I'm going to this, elite institution, which, I'm not sure that UC Denver is an elite institution, but say if you were, it is very program specific to how much funding you're able to get from your program. There's other ways to get funding and help paying for your degree, but it's definitely something that you need to take into consideration when you're looking at programs at different institutions. So you don't get Pell Grants for graduate school. That's sometimes a common misconception that, oh, well, I'll still have Pell. You won't have Pell. Pell is strictly for your associate's and bachelor's degree. Once you have your degree awarded to you, you're cut off from Pell. No more free money for that. And so you will be, what your option is, one of your options is student loans. And so I know for some people, student loans come with interest rates. You have to pay interest on student loans, and that really definitely adds up. I'm sure we've all heard horror stories of what that can look like. There's ways, to be very careful about it. But, you have to go about finding that free and given away money in different ways. Any questions on that before I move on? Let me move my participant view here.
Actually, I have a quick question.
Yes.
And it might be something you're going to talk about, but how is the best way to find out like what schools that we're looking into, how like the money that they'll have available? Or you said that it's really important to some have more money for different programs. How do we determine that?
Ask. That's going to be your first, quickest, hopefully. You have to ask when you're looking at programs. You shouldn't just be looking at the website. If you're really narrowing down your programs and you see some that you're interested in, you should be meeting with academic advisors. I know I've actually visited a number of master's programs just because of the work that I do and whatever. I plan graduate school visits, and so I end up talking to advisors. Some advisors are more knowledgeable in financial aid than others. So you should be always meeting in some capacity with somebody from the program that you're interested in going to. If that person is unable to answer funding questions, you ask them, who can I talk to? So that's probably going to be somebody in financial aid. And I know when I went to DU, I spent a little bit of time at DU. They basically told me, well, when you apply and get accepted and you come they have this day where you have your interview day, whatever, then they will tell you how much not financial aid, but how much of a scholarship you will get, how much aid you will get from the school itself. So it looks different at different institutions, but you have to ask because it's not always going to be clear. At the end of the day, I think, unfortunately, institutions want your money. You are money to them. You are a dollar sign to them. And so you really have to ask and advocate for yourself and be like, okay, what are ways that you can help me pay for my degree? Do you have, and I'm going to go into this in more detail, but you really have to, be very specific about what types of questions that you're asking as far as what kind of funding is available, what are your options, stuff like that.
And I'm first generation, so sometimes the order of things gets confusing. So it sounds like I would apply for the schools and programs that I'm interested in, and then that after I apply is when I meet with an advisor?
No. Personally, I would advise you to meet before you apply to any program, because as was my experience when I was first exploring grad school, I went to visit a different program at CU Denver that I was interested in, not the one that I'm currently in, but a different program. And I actually had a very bad experience. I did not have my questions answered. I talked to 2 different people in the same program, none of which were able to answer very specific questions for me, which was really confusing to me. You should be meeting people and having all of your questions asked before you apply to the program. You may not know what kind of questions to ask. This workshop series that we are doing from last week to this week are kind of to try to help you figure what those questions are. Outside of that, you should also be meeting with your professors and your academic advisors, people like me. I have my email in the chat to help kind of guide you through that, because I was also a first generation student, and it's why I went to a program that I wasn't even interested in, because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I just was listening to the wrong people, I think. Not necessarily, but it just didn't work out for me because I didn't know what the heck I was doing, right? I didn't know what kind of questions to ask or what I should be looking for. But it's really important that you talk to people on campus, visit campus if possible, sit in on a class if possible, before actually applying to the program, so that way you can actually get a feel for what the program looks like.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
You're welcome. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. So, if you've attended some of our other workshops, you may have seen this information. But again, just to kind of remind you that you should first, before applying to any programs, you should first, understand if your career path actually requires one, because there are some that you just really don't need it. It's not going to lead to a significant increase in pay in some fields, unless you want to go into education and teaching and stuff like that. That's a whole different story, but that's the kind of research that you need to do. What is going to be the benefit to my career and to my bank account, really, at the end of the day, because it is an investment. And if you're not going to make, enough money, if it's not going to mean higher positions for you, you may not want to make that investment. It's great to know stuff, but you still got to pay for it, right? You probably are going to have to pay for it. Some of you might get lucky and not have to pay for it, but you may have to pay for it. And it's a lot of time. Let's see. And again, what does the application process look like? The program requirements, entrance exams, all the required documents. It's a lot of work to, just going through the actual process of applying. And so you'll want to know what that looks like first. And then just to kind of show you a resource here of, you may not know if the career that you are interested in actually requires a degree. So I'm going to show you something that you have available to you at MSU Denver. Do you all see my screen still? The vault? Okay, cool. So if you go to Career Services, the Career Services website, you actually have this little area where you can meet with them too, to do one-on-one exploration. If you feel like you would have a better time navigating this with somebody walking you through it, that's absolutely fine and doable as well. You can explore majors and careers. So say if I were an accounting major, say it's going to list some career opportunities for me, some possible jobs that I might have. These are other careers with accounting. Say if my major was accounting, these are some possible positions I might have. Let's just click on a random one, management consultant, and it pulls up this other website. It's called, what is this? ONET Online. Sorry, I was having problems reading it because there was like no period. I don't know, it was weird. It's like, I don't know how to read that. But anyways, so it lists, the different types of skills that you're going to need. These are possible certifications. It doesn't say certifications, but these are things that you can learn and get actual certifications in. So you can say I'm certified in whatever this Transact SQL. I don't know what that is. I'm not a technology person. It has here just different kind of things that you're going to have to do. And if you keep scrolling down, education, most of these occupations require a graduate degree. For example, they may require a master's degree and some require a PhD, MD, or JD. So that tells you right there that if you are going to be an accounting major, it probably will benefit you to get a master's degree because you'll just make more money and you're not going to be strictly doing people's taxes, say. I don't even think technically you need a degree to do people's taxes. I think there's like certifications that you can get, but what I'm saying is you'll just make more money in that field. And so it says here, it looks like, again, at least half the people in this field have at least a master's degree. And then just to kind of show you another tool that you can look in, you can actually look at their pay and you can do it by state. And this is just like, it looks like this is probably a national average, but you'd want to do it by state to be more specific, because national averages, it can vary wildly from one state to the other. So yeah, I just wanted to show you that. Any questions on that before I move on? Please use this. It's a valuable tool for y'all to have. I think a lot of students kind of sleep on this, but it's a great way for you to, if you're not certain what kind of career that you want to have, but you are, already have your major declared, this is a great way to explore what your options are within that particular major. And might help some of you decide that you may or may not be on the right path. Okay, cool. So when I tell you, I see a question, Alexandria. I saw a hand up. I don't know if that was.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just have a quick question about the vault. So for somebody like me, I already know my major. I want to do, I'm going to school for speech language and hearing sciences right now, but I want to take that and become an SLP, which does require a master's program. What benefits, like I kind of already know like where I can work in terms of like, schools, hospitals, long-term care facilities, that kind of stuff. What other information could the vault potentially provide for somebody like me who already has an idea of what options are out there for job placement?
Yeah, I mean, it might help you with some other skills that you may need, but again, it's going to be depending on where it is that you work, like if you work in a school versus working in, say, private practice, the kind of things that you're going to be doing are going to look very different. So not saying that you have to have that narrowed down or figured out either, because you'll have time to kind of figure that out, but that's kind of something that might tell you like, oh, well, these are things that might be helpful to kind of start dabbling in, whether it be in an internship or in even the types of classes that you're selecting for your master's degree. Because you probably, I don't know, different degrees are set up differently, but if you had a concentration, it might help like be like, oh, if I think I do want to work in a school over having, you know, a private practice or whatever, it looks like these are going to be the different things that will be helpful to know. I mean, I think that's kind of the biggest thing is just general, you know, they have these different, you can look at like job openings. So another thing that's kind of helpful that you should be doing, and this is something that I've always done before I graduated with my bachelor's degree, and even that I do now that I'm working on my master's, is I look at jobs. So you can look at different job openings and see, like, look at jobs that you find that might sound interesting to you and be like, oh, if I want to, like, let's just say, for example, because I'm already here at this Institute of Management Consultants USA, let's see what kind of requirements they have. So you can have an idea of, once you are out in the field, this just takes me to a website. It should have their jobs. You can probably look at their jobs somewhere. But, you know, when you're looking at jobs, you'll see actually like real life. Okay, so when I'm out there in the field and I'm looking for a job, these are going to be the kind of skills that I probably should need. And so, you know, looking through different jobs, you know, this is not the only place that you can look through jobs. There's all different kinds of places, but can give you an idea of like real world, this is actually practical application type stuff that I'm going to need to know.
No, okay. And then on the trio side of things, like if you met with somebody from like the C2 hub and kind of went through this with them and talked about that, would that count as a C2 hub requirement if they emailed you guys?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Where was I? Here we go. Okay. So yeah, I think I can't stress enough how much you should be shopping your degree. I know what my final interest ended up being, I don't have a lot of program options. There's, I think, one master's of, well, I think CU Boulder might have other, but anyways, my program options were a little bit more limited because my major is Spanish. That I'm getting a master's in Spanish. There's just not like a lot of those programs. But anyways, particularly with sciences and some of the like the technology fields, particularly here in Denver, you do have options, and you know, even across the nation. So you want to see, you know, not only is it super important that the courses that you're going to be taking, the things that you're going to be learning, the faculty that you're going to be working with, that all of that is relevant to what your particular interest in, like that's first and foremost. But second, you want to see, how am I going to pay for this? And again, I can't stress enough, you want to have this information, so at least you're making an educated decision when you are selecting your program of what are they going to offer me? I mean, that's, you know, like I said, you are a dollar sign to them. And so some programs are better than others about like, how do I want to say it? Like dating you. DU does an excellent job of selling themselves. Like they want to convince you, they want you to feel special. They want to feel like, oh, well, you know, I feel comfortable here because they're so accommodating and they have all these fancy lunches and all this stuff, right? And some programs don't do that. So that may or may not matter to you. To me personally, I was like, yeah, I think because I was naive, I was like, oh, they're making me feel so special. Like they want me here, right? But at the end of the day, it wasn't the right place for me. And I, you know, had to take a number of, actually, I realized that fairly early into the program. I just had to like decide it was okay for me to quit. That's a whole nother conversation. But, you know, you really want to see what are they going to offer you? And I'm going to talk about ways to kind of go about asking those kinds of questions, but that's what you want. Like, what are you going to do for me? And so like I said, some programs have lots of options to help you pay for school. You need to find what those options for you are going to be or not going to be. And that's why it's also super important. You know, this is, I would say, if you are going to get a master's degree, what I'm about to say is a little bit controversial because I don't want to say your GPA doesn't matter. I think we put a lot of pressure on GPA, and I think, you know, a lot of us, might have families that we're taking care of and having to work full time. So sometimes a high GPA is really hard to maintain because we're not just students, we're multidimensional people with lots of things going on in our lives. But if you want to go to grad school, your GPA is kind of important. So this is kind of one of those places where typically, I tell my students like, hey, learn the material, pass those classes, try to get a good GPA, but sometimes you're doing the best that you can. And I don't want you all to think that you aren't smart and you don't know what you're doing and that you don't have value because you're juggling, a million other personal things that might be hard to navigate. But if you do want to go to grad school, you kind of do need a good GPA. Not to say that you're not going to get into programs with a lower GPA. The point that I'm trying to make here, the higher your GPA is, if you are considering grad school, the better you are able, in some cases, to leverage that as like, well, I have this 4.0 GPA. This is the kind of research that I've been able to do as an undergraduate. What can you do for me to help me pay for school? And I'll give you a perfect example of a student. I had a student he was not in our program, but he worked with us as a tutor in TRIO. This particular student was undocumented. He's a brilliant chemist. Chemistry was his major. I think he may have had a 4.0 or just very, very close to a 4.0 GPA. Smart, super, super, super smart guy. His preferred institution was School of Mines. When he went to go talk to School of Mines, they weren't really offering him much. I think they offered him a small stipend and a TA position, but he was basically going to have to pay out of pocket for tuition because as an undocumented student, he didn't even have access to student loans. So that's a lot of money. Who can afford that? Very few people. Some people out there can, but I don't know anybody personally that would be able to afford something like that. So what he did, he's like, well, I can't afford that. So he went to DU. He had applied and gotten, I think he had applied and gotten accepted to DU, but before he did, he went and talked to them, of course, because he was taking our advice. And basically they offered him a full ride scholarship. They offered him a teaching assistantship. They offered him a cost of living stipend and housing on campus. He was in a position because he had done all kinds of undergraduate research. I don't know how many projects he had done, but he was on at least 2 pretty big projects that got featured in the undergraduate research thing. I forget the full name of it, but the undergraduate research conference. His educational resume just looked really good and his transcripts look really good. And so while it wasn't his preferred institution, he was not, he unfortunately just wasn't in a position where he could afford to pay. He literally couldn't pay out of pocket. So he was able to leverage that, and DU saw him as like a valuable asset. They're like, well, you're the type of student that we want, right? For some reason, Mines did not view him the same way and just wasn't, wanting to give him, maybe the program didn't have as much money as the one at DU had. I don't know what the case was, but they just did not offer him. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying shop. Now, you don't have to have a super high GPA to shop, but you still need to know, do you have teaching assistantships? Do you have scholarship opportunities that I can apply for? Do you have, what kind of research are you conducting? Is there research opportunities that I can work in a lab, or, do you offer internships on campus? That's another thing that's, I did not like DU. That was not the place for me, but as part of their, they offer a lot of internship opportunities. And so that most of them are paid internships. You can, if you're interested in working in education, you can get an actual job on campus. If you can get hired, some of them have tuition reimbursement. So you have to ask these questions like, what are some options? Do you have tuition and reimbursement? Do you have, all these things that I'm telling you are the questions that you should be asking before that you apply. So that way, you know what you're getting yourself into. Any questions on that? Does that make sense?
Tisha, you might have this later, but can you explain what an assistantship is and a fellowship?
Yeah, so a teaching assistantship is like, so you can be, there's different types of assistantship. I think I'm just familiar with the ones that are offered by my particular programs that I happen to have personal knowledge of. So in my particular program, I can be a teaching assistant. So I would have, they offer a small stipend. It's not a lot at CU Denver for my particular program. Other programs, it's a different story, depending on how much money the program has. But you can, I think they pair you with a professor, and you basically are their teaching assistant. So you might be, working with students, asking questions. You might be teaching the actual class, co-teaching with your professor. It might look different at different institutions. Fellowships, your institution may have fellowships. I'm not, it's been a minute since I looked at fellowships. Some programs and institutions might have fellowships. Sometimes you have to find outside fellowships. So I think they are, I don't think I'm going to explain this really well. Give me a sec. I'm going to do what I'm going to tell you all to do when you don't know the answers to things. Google it. What is a fellowship? I should know the answer to this question, and I apologize that I don't. So monetary award given to a scholar for your academic pursuits. So when I was looking at schools, the particular programs I was looking at, like none of them offered fellowships. There are outside fellowship opportunities. I don't know how competitive they are. It might vary by what kind of program that you are, by the type of fellowship. I always think just like, gosh, what is that one fellowship that people tend to get a lot? Oh, somebody mentioned it in one of our workshops not too long ago. But there are some that are like, you've probably heard them before and you just didn't know what it was. Sorry, I got hung up on trying to think of that name of that fellowship. So just, do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, and I also can't think of the name. It's something in STEM, but
yes.
I know most fellowships are associated with doing some type of research. So I have a few students that got fellowships to, well, one of them that got one at Loyola University, and they were doing research with a faculty member. And so their application materials and all that had to show how they would be a good fit for that fellowship in that particular area of research that the faculty member was doing. So usually the fellowships are more like you're going to do some type of research and you will get paid to help with that research and assist a professor in doing that.
So it's different than a scholarship, because with a scholarship, you apply for a scholarship, you probably have to write an essay and probably more people get it, whereas fellowships are a little bit more exclusive and harder to get. And now that I'm saying it, I remember DU did offer some fellowships, not for my particular program, but for other programs. My particular, I don't know, I bet CU Denver has some for some of their medical programs, not for my particular program, just because my only option is a teaching assistantship or getting a job. They actually, UC Denver has a great tuition benefit program. You get three classes a year paid for. That would be my entire degree. If I were to work there, I should work there, but I like MSU Denver. Yeah, so those are things that you may want to look for. And just like scholarships, fellowships, you'll probably have to have like GPA requirements. There's probably going to be all these things that you have to meet in order to qualify. And then a fellowship is a little bit more exclusive because it's not like they just hand them out. You have to apply for that. And then the best of that particular pool gets probably selected, or maybe not selected if they don't have any good candidates for it. I don't know.
Can I say one thing about the assistantship?
Yep.
That's actually how I paid for my master's degree. Is I had an assistantship, and they not only paid me to work on campus at the university I attended, but they also gave me a monthly stipend that I could use to pay for rent, food, literally anything. It was just a monthly check that I got, and they paid for my part of my school, the tuition. Not all of it, because I ended up taking out some loans and I also got a scholarship, but it paid a lot of money. So I would really recommend looking at programs that have an assistantship.
Yep. Assistantships just have more benefits. Like an internship, you hopefully will get paid, you know, at least at the point where you have a bachelor's degree, but there are going to be some that, you know, if you get paid, like I remember seeing some internships at DU and I'm like, you want to pay me how much with a bachelor's degree? Like I could get a more pay working at like a fast food place. And that's really sad. But like assistantship, Sam is saying, you know, you often have, you know, a cost of living, some of their monthly stipends, some are better than others. So it's super important. Like, you know, like I said, some programs have more money for that and some don't. So you really want to ask those questions and do that research. And if you're doing you know, doing research with faculty or, you know, whatever that's looking like for you, I mean, that's such a great thing to help build your resume. Like, fantastic to be able to do that. Yeah, cost of living on campus. I think I've already talked about that. Okay, so this is something I'll see if hopefully I can share this with you. If not, you'll have to email me if you're interested. I did not attend this workshop, but there was this graduate school thing that I wanted to attend. But anyways, so this is a directory of fully funded graduate programs and full funding awards. So I've kind of like glanced at it. It looks like it has, I don't know these people that it was put together, but it lists, I think there's more funded PhD programs than there are master's programs, but I'm going to scroll down. So it has a list of master's programs that are funded. It's not super, you see there's not a whole lot of master's programs that are, let's just look at full funding awards for Masters of Biology, for example. These are different. Let me see if I can make this bigger so you can see. Oops. I'm going to try to post this in the chat so you can have this as a resource, but it lists all the different universities, look, Loyola University, that have their biology programs that are funded. So if you wanted to, you know, if you're working on your, yeah, and so it just goes on. So there's not a ton. Fulbright Institute. Oh, what is this? Oh, this one's in Spain. Ooh, I did not notice that. So it looks like maybe they list some in other countries too. University of Denver, Masters of Chemistry. Yeah, so this is hopefully, you know, could potentially be a helpful resource for y'all to have. Unfortunately, again, like I said, there's not enough. There's some English programs. That's nice. If you wanted to, you know, get your PhD eventually in English to teach. Look at this one. This position includes an annual salary of $16,000, a waiver of university tuition and student health insurance. Huh. It's a graduate teaching assistant. Okay, so see, you get your graduate teaching experience. You have an annual salary. That's not a great annual salary. But hey, it's funded, right? You don't have to pay tuition. Yeah, so this one's not bad. I mean, it's not terrible, right? But anyways, I'll put this in the chat in just a minute. So I hope this is a helpful resource for y'all. Do y'all have any questions on that? So it's, you know, for me, I wasn't able to keep my options as open as I would have liked to because I didn't want to move. And there's only, you know, this was the most affordable program for me in this area. But, you know, like like I was telling you about that one student that I had, he even went back to Mines because he really, like he had always talked about Mines and he did not want to go to DU. That's, you know, that was what he had in his mind. So he ended up going back to Mines and saying, hey, like DU is offering me this. You know, this is where I want to be. Is there a way for you to work with me? And they actually didn't. They didn't value him enough. Maybe they didn't have enough money. It could have been a lot of things. But so he had to make his choice and go to DU because like he literally couldn't afford to pay. But so that's kind of, you don't want to have like this cocky attitude, well, like, what can you do for me? But what you can say is, here's some wording for you as you are exploring and comparing different opportunities for how your institutions may or may not want to work with you. This is what I am looking for. And, you know, depending on what your major is, it may be very different things. So I don't want to, you know, just give you my own personal experience, but this is what I'm looking for. You should know what you're looking for in your master's program, hopefully. If not, you should be meeting with people to help you formulate what that needs to look like for you based on your career goals, based on what you want to do. So kind of get that idea refined so that way you can go and be like, this is what I want. How can we make this work? You know, I'm, you know, a low income student. I am fresh out of a bachelor's degree with little work experience. I need help. I would like help paying for this. What are your options? What can you do for me? You know, you have to ask these questions. You know, you can't be afraid to advocate for yourself. Like I said, you may not know the kind of questions that you're supposed to ask, but that's what this whole series is here for, to kind of help you get those ideas in your mind. And use your resources. Talk to your teachers, talk to your professors, talk to your advisors, talk to anybody that you know that is in the field. Ask them, you know, what did you not know about grad school? What is some advice that you would give me? What are some things that I should know? What are some questions that I should be asking? Take notes. Okay. If you're not taking notes, you should be taking notes. Because it's a huge decision. It's a huge, not only a financial investment, but a huge investment of your time. And the things that you will go through in grad school, you will not be prepared for. And so you want to make the best decision possible and get as much information so that way you're making an informed decision to, you know, to the best of your ability. You want to make an informed decision. So, you know, learn how to advocate for yourself. If you haven't started doing that today's the day, today's the challenge of, you know, understand what it is that you need and that you're looking for and know how to ask for it. Does that make sense?
Yes, wise words.
Again, you may have some scholarship opportunities. My particular program does not offer any scholarship opportunity. There might be some national ones that I can apply for. Those, I just think some of them are, first off, a scam. They just want to get your information to start sending you things. But there's, you know, just like the national fellowships, there might be more competition. The competition is higher for them. So if there's any, like DU, I hate to keep bringing them up just because it's just a good example. They actually have lots of scholarship opportunity. They have lots of wealthy donors. And so they have, you know, scholarship opportunity in that particular institution is great. Mine, not so great. But that's, again, as usual, it's more work that you have to put in because you have to write essays and, you know, make sure you meet it, particularly at graduate level, you may have to meet other criteria that you didn't have to meet as an undergraduate, but it's an option for you. And that's a question that you should be asking before you're applying. What kind of scholarship opportunities do you have? Some institutions, you don't even have to apply for them. They just deposit them into your account. That was DU. You don't have to apply for anything. You do your FAFSA. They see where you're at financially. Hold on, my cat is getting into the trash. Hold on, I got to stop this emergency. Hey, get out of there. No. Sorry. I apologize for that. He's being naughty today. Yeah, so you need to see, are these scholarships things that I can apply for? Or are they things that are just going to be deposited into my account? So questions, again, that you have to ask. You didn't know this before, but now you do. Oh yeah, and so some jobs will actually pay for you to get your degree. So this is just a general Google search. Like this is how all of my financial type stuff that I do for my workshops, I just Google it and I look at a bunch of different websites. I'll show you really quick, just so we have this. This is a website. This is something I did last year. Anyways, it just lists a bunch of different companies. I'm sure there's different websites that show different companies, but here's 36 that could help pay for your degree. So Wells Fargo, Comcast, we have Comcast here, Starbucks, Verizon, Bank of America, Best Buy, Home Depot. So they have different ways that they go about paying. Chipotle. They have different ways that they go about paying for your degree. So if you happen to work for any of these places now, you should look into it. It may be easier said than done, depending on, I think I saw one of my students in here, Target. My student that's in here, if you're paying attention, Target was on this list, look into that. But yeah, so that's another way. A former coworker of ours actually works for a company that helps companies that pay for college navigate this stuff with students. Sam, do you remember the name of it?
Now that you asked me, I just forgot. I'll put it in the chat. I'll remember.
Okay. But anyways, so that's another way that you can fund your degree. And that's my presentation. You know, not trying to simplify it, wanting to be mindful of time. Let me, where do I stop share? Here we go. Sorry.
Tisha,
there we go.
Can I add a couple of things to what you said that you made me think of? First, scholarship. So I used to work in a cultural center and we served Latinx students. And we had a scholarship that our office offered every year, and we never had enough applicants. And it was targeted to students in their undergraduate degree, but we started offering it to students in the master's or PhD level programs. So that's another recommendation for you all, is that at the institutions that you're going to, there might be some scholarships that are not necessarily marked or, you know, promoted as for a graduate student, but if not a lot of people apply, we have scholarship money to give out. So I would still encourage you all to just apply, and they could adjust the scholarships for you. And then the second thing I was going to mention, just because I know as a first-gen student, I couldn't really picture all of the payments and all this stuff, but typically if you were to get a full fellowship, because there's partial funding for fellowships, or a full assistantship, you won't really have the time to be working a separate job unless it's like in the summer or in breaks or something like that. And that's a way to also save your own money to fund your degrees during that time when maybe you're not teaching or you're not working, depending on your fellowship or assistantship, where you can save up money with a summer job or a winter break job and kind of do it that way. But that was something that popped in my head from what Tisha was saying.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. And I was able to put this document, the funded graduate programs, I did put it in the chat there, so you have access to that now. If for some reason you can't, I also put my email down there. You know, email me if you want me to email it to you. If you have questions and need help just kind of figuring out like, this is a lot of information, because it really is, and it feels very stressful, especially now that you're still in school and trying to navigate like finishing the semester successfully. You know, let me know. I can definitely, I've helped a few students apply for graduate programs. A few of them have gotten in, you know, it's always really cool to see. And, you know, take your time. You know, the biggest thing, like, don't rush the process. You need to make an educated decision, because you're your only advocate. You know, there's going to be few people, some people will have your back and be watching out for you. But, you know, particularly, I know as you know, there's going to be times where you are on your own and you're not going to have anybody, you know, check in to make sure that you did everything correctly, or, you know, saying, oh, I see this person doing this, but I think they should, you know, try something a little different because this might be better for them. You're not always going to have those people. So learn how to be your own advocate and ask for the things that you need. The worst that they're going to tell you is no. And if they tell you no, then you know how to make your decision. So don't be afraid to ask for the things that would be in your own best interest. Because, you know, you're going to be on your own making these decisions and having to make the choices. So Guild, yes, Guild is that company, Guild Education, right? Yeah, so I was just saying, we have a former coworker who used to work here at MSU Denver, who helps, I think, students navigate this process, is their particular role of when they have companies that want to pay for, or that will pay for tuition. I'm not sure exactly the nature of the work, but he basically helps those people navigate what getting the education paid for by their company looks like. So that's awesome. I hope this is helpful information. You know, going through the process of paying, you know, I rely on student loans and I pay out of pocket. as much as I can because I don't want to incur any more student loans than I have to. Would be another advice. I have a professional job, I just that's the way it worked out for me. And I'm able to pay a little bit out of pocket for my tuition. And so as much as I can that I do. Oh, and my work also has a graduate school stipend that I can use, not right now because of COVID ruined that, took away the budget for that. But prior I had like $750 I could use a year. Honestly, not much compared to the amount of tuition that I'm paying, but I'll take any free money that I can have to put towards that. And so your work might have, a tuition benefit. And if ask, because they're not going to tell you, more likely than not, sometimes why do they want to pay extra money? But ask if your company has a tuition benefit and what do you need to do to get that set up for yourself? Because that $750 a year is, tuition that I don't have to pay. And I'd like to be able to use that. Yeah.
One thing, definitely, if you're having questions, but you're embarrassed to ask, don't be embarrassed. This is the time. Go ahead and put it in the chat or unmute. But one more thing I wanted to say, one of my sad stories of my grad school experience is that I actually didn't get an assistantship at first when I applied. And like I mentioned this in the chat, but like getting my master's program paid for was my #1 priority. And so I didn't get one right away, but I did find another job on campus. And then through that, I was able to then get an assistantship, which worked out before I even started in the fall semester. But if you don't find one right away, don't just get discouraged. You do have to weigh the pros and cons if you were to continue, your first year maybe without it. But a lot of times, and I even had friends that also didn't get one, but in their second year, they were able to get it paid for. And that was the other thing. If you're an out-of-state student, you go somewhere else, your first year, usually you'll pay out-of-state tuition, but your second year, usually the university will help you get residency so that you're not paying out-of-state tuition, so that it's cheaper for you. So that's another thing to consider.
Yeah. And never stop looking for those opportunities. Make friends with professors for sure. I think we've talked about this in one of our other workshops, but they can align you with opportunities to make money. My professor's been, he pushes the teaching assistantship, and having a relationship with him positions me to better be able to get something like that. I don't have time. I have a full-time job. I'm not trying to kill myself to get this piece of paper. But building those relationships can be really instrumental in opening up opportunities for making extra money or getting funding in some capacity. And, I'm shy. I'm an introvert. I'm often intimidated by professors and people that I think are smarter than me. And I do it anyways. And then you get comfortable with it, and you do build a relationship, like a working relationship with people who open up opportunities for you. And so don't sleep on it. Take advantage of it. Always be looking out for your best interest and take those opportunities that come your way, or make them happen if they are not coming your way in the way that you need them to.
Thank you. I see that there are some people logging off, so we'll totally stay till the end of the hour, till 11. But before you go, let's do a little hand clap, or in the chat a thank you, or use the emoji to clap or celebrate Tisha, because this was so important. You all, getting your graduate degree paid for can be hard, but you can do it. So thank you so much, Tisha.